The studio lights dimmed, casting a golden glow across the set. It was supposed to be a routine interview, another stop on Keanu Reeves' press tour. Yet, from the moment he entered, something was different. Keanu sat quietly, his posture relaxed but his eyes distant, as if carrying a burden he'd never shared. The host, sensing the gravity in the air, dispensed with small talk. "Keanu, you've played Seekers and Warriors, but you keep your personal life private. Is there something deeply personal you've never shared before?" Keanu hesitated, looking down, his fingers interlaced. "There is something," he finally said, his voice calm but edged with seriousness. "It's something I've carried for years, and maybe it's time people heard it." The audience stilled, phones gripped but not raised. "It has to do with the Vatican," Keanu continued. "In a private meeting I had with Pope Francis." The host blinked, caught off guard. "You met the Pope?" Keanu nodded. "Yes. It wasn't public. No photos, no press. I was in Italy for a film. The Vatican reached out. At first, I thought it was a joke. But it wasn't." He described how the Vatican's invitation came through unofficial channels, a letter delivered by hand. Keanu, not a man of grand religious gestures, was hesitant. He believed in kindness, humility, and the dignity of serving others, but he kept his beliefs close. Still, something about the invitation stirred him, a sense that something important was waiting if he was brave enough to step into the unknown. He accepted. The Vatican was quieter than he'd imagined, less fortress, more living memory. The halls were cool, the air thick with the scent of candle wax and old books, a place where centuries of whispered prayers lingered in the stone. When Pope Francis entered, there was no ceremony. No entourage. Just a man with kind eyes, a gentle smile, and a heart that seemed to carry the world's sorrows without being crushed by them. They spoke for hours about life, suffering, hope, and the strange loneliness that comes with being known by millions but truly seen by few. Pope Francis listened more than he spoke. He acknowledged the darkness that can creep into any institution, even one built on faith. "Some people wear crosses," the Pope said, "but they don't carry faith." Keanu listened, not interrupting, because in that moment it wasn't about answers, it was about something being let go. As their meeting ended, the Pope reached into his coat and produced a small envelope, old, thick paper, sealed with red wax stamped with the papal crest. No name, no date, just the seal. "If I don't see you again, this must not die with me," Pope Francis said, pressing the envelope into Keanu's hands. Keanu didn't ask questions. He nodded and left, the envelope tucked away in a worn leather folder, always close but never opened. For years, he told himself it was symbolic, maybe nothing. But when news broke that Pope Francis had died, something shifted in him. Now, on live television, Keanu reached into his jacket and slowly pulled out the envelope. The camera zoomed in, the room went still. He held it gently, his thumb tracing the edge of the seal. "I've never opened this," he said quietly. "But I think now is the time." He broke the wax. Inside was a letter written in the Pope's hand. The words were simple but chilling. The Pope confessed that within the Church, there were those who had lost their way, who wore the cloth but not the faith, who had allowed power to overshadow compassion. He warned that the world would soon face a test, not of doctrine, but of humanity itself. The letter ended, "If you are reading this, it means the time for silence is over. Let the world see the truth, and let faith be reborn in honesty." The studio was silent. The host, visibly shaken, asked, "Why you?" Keanu shrugged, humility in his voice. He said, "I carried silence with dignity. That sometimes, the world needs a witness, not a judge." The revelation sent shockwaves through the studio and, almost instantly, the world. Social media erupted. Hashtags like #Keanu and the Pope and #VaticanTruth trended globally. News outlets scrambled for confirmation. Within hours, a cardinal from the Vatican issued a rare televised statement. "Yes," the cardinal said, "there was a private meeting between His Holiness Pope Francis and Mr. Reeves. It occurred in 2019. The Pope has met with many artists, thinkers, and individuals who carry influence not to influence them, but to listen, to engage. What was discussed in that meeting remains confidential. However, Mr. Reeves is not mistaken in his recounting of the Pope's concern. His Holiness has long spoken both publicly and privately about the challenges within the Church, about the human flaws that can corrupt institutions, and yes, even about those within the cloth who do not walk the path of faith. The Church is not made holy by its walls, but by its people. And like any body of people, there is struggle, there is pain, there is sometimes darkness. We do not fear the light that exposes these things. We welcome it. The Cardinal's words were not a denial, nor a deflection, but a deliberate acknowledgement that there was truth in Keanu's story. The statement ended abruptly, no questions taken. The Cardinal bowed and exited, leaving the world to digest what had just happened. Headlines flashed: Vatican confirms Reeves meeting a silent admission. Pope's inner circle breaks silence on internal darkness. Crowds gathered in St. Peter's Square, some clutching rosaries, others holding signs, "Truth shall set you free." Keanu, meanwhile, vanished from the public eye. No tweets, no interviews, no statements. Days later, a video quietly appeared on his verified YouTube channel, titled only, "For Those Who Are Still Listening." It showed Keanu alone in a candlelit cabin, dressed simply, his face illuminated by firelight. He spoke softly, "Faith isn't gone. It's waiting." And silence doesn't mean peace, it can signify the beginning of something new. He did not elaborate, but the message resonated deeply. The world was left to wrestle with the implications. Religious scholars and commentators debated the meaning of Keanu's revelation and the Vatican's response. Some saw it as a call for transparency and reform within the Church, others as a symbolic gesture, a reminder that even the most revered institutions are made up of flawed individuals. The Pope's willingness to meet with Keanu, a man outside the Church, was seen by many as a sign of humility and openness, a recognition that wisdom and truth can come from unexpected places. As days turned to weeks, the story continued to ripple outward. People from all walks of life shared their own stories of faith, doubt, and redemption. The Vatican, for its part, did not issue further statements, allowing the conversation to unfold organically. Keanu's words, and the Pope's implicit acknowledgement of internal struggles, sparked a global movement for introspection, honesty, and hope. Meanwhile, investigative journalists dug deeper. Some Vatican insiders confirmed that Pope Francis had grown increasingly concerned about corruption and secrecy within the Church's highest ranks. The Pope had spoken privately about the need for a new era of transparency, even if it meant exposing painful truths. The letter to Keanu was not the only one. Other artists and thinkers had reportedly received similar messages, urging them to use their platforms to encourage dialogue and reform. As the weeks passed, more voices joined the conversation. Survivors of church abuse, reform-minded clergy, and lay people called for a reckoning, not out of anger, but out of hope for a better future. The Church faced unprecedented scrutiny, but also a renewed sense of purpose. The Pope's message, delivered through an unlikely messenger, had started a fire that could not be extinguished. Keanu, for his part, remained silent, letting the world interpret his actions. He was seen attending small gatherings, listening more than speaking, always carrying the envelope, now resealed, as a reminder of the responsibility he'd been given. The world, too, carried the weight of the revelation. In churches, homes, and public squares, people gathered to discuss what it meant to live with honesty, to confront darkness with light, and to find faith not in institutions, but in each other. The story faded from headlines, but its impact lingered. Keanu's courage to speak, Pope Francis's willingness to trust, and the world's readiness to listen had changed the conversation about faith, truth, and the power of a single voice to spark global reflection. In the end, what began as a quiet revelation in a dimly lit studio became a catalyst for worldwide introspection. Keanu Reeves, known for his humility and humanity, had become the unlikely messenger of a truth that transcended fame, power, and tradition. The world listened and, perhaps, began to heal.